Welcome to Sinister Serials, where shadows whisper and every tale chills to the bone. Join us on Macabre Monday for gothic tales shrouded in mist and mystery. Beneath the cloak of night, where shadows whisper secrets of old, lies a tale of curses woven through generations untold. Within these hallowed halls, the McAllister lineage battles a darkness that clings to their very souls. Bound by blood and burdened with breaking the unbreakable, they confront their fate at the stroke of the witching hour. Join us if you dare for Macabre Monday, where each story unfolds a tapestry of terror and tantalizing tales.
Chapter 17. Margaret McAllister knelt beside her daughter, her hands trembling as she wiped soot and dampness from Lily's face. The gentle touch grounded her, offering a fleeting moment of solace in the face of the unknown. Around them, the remnants of the ritual remained visible, complex markings etched into the floor and ancient idols lining the walls, their presence a stark reminder of the forces they had invoked. Minutes, perhaps hours, had passed since the ritual's conclusion, yet the outside world and its rhythms felt distant and inconsequential. The air hung heavy, infused with the lingering scent of herbs and burnt offerings, while the cold floor pressed against Margaret's bare feet, a physical manifestation of the chilling dread that gripped her heart. In the aftermath of the ritual, Margaret craved clarity amidst the emotional chaos. She searched for any sign that Lily lived, desperate for a way to protect what remained of her family. Hope warred with a paralyzing fear, the uncertainty of their success or failure a weight that threatened to crush her very soul. Had the ritual succeeded, or had they unwittingly unleashed an even greater horror upon themselves and the world? As if in answer to her silent plea, Lily stirred, a single, ragged breath escaping her lips. Her eyelids fluttered, the movement so slight that Margaret might have missed it had she not been watching with such fierce intensity. The obstacle of Lily's weakness was evident, exhaustion and a haunting pallor marring her delicate features. Margaret's heart clenched, a sickening fear that her daughter's spirit might be broken beyond repair, even if her body clung stubbornly to life. But then, Lily's eyes slowly opened, and Margaret felt a jolt of both hope and fear. There was something different in her daughter's gaze, an unsettling clarity that seemed to pierce the very fabric of reality. It was as if Lily had witnessed truths beyond the veil, secrets that no mortal was meant to know. Robert rushed to their side, his relief at Lily's waking undercut by a sense of foreboding. He, too, noticed the change in his daughter, the new strength mirrored with an almost inhuman serenity in her eyes. It was a look that spoke of ancient wisdom and unfathomable burdens, a knowledge that no child should ever have to bear. Margaret's emotions swirled, a dizzying mix of elation and terror. Lily was alive, but this felt like a fragile reprieve rather than a true victory. The battle, it seemed, was far from over. Gathering her determination, Margaret set aside her fear for the moment. They had come too far to surrender now, no matter what horrors might still lie ahead. With gentle hands, she helped Lily sit up, the girl's frail form feeling impossibly light in her arms.
Elara.
Lily's voice was faint, yet firm, cutting through the oppressive silence like a knife.
She's not gone. Something has changed.
The words were chilling, a confirmation of Margaret's worst fears. Elias stepped closer, the perpetual shadow of fear that clung to him replaced with a grim focus.
We need to find a way to sever her bond to the locket, to break her connection to this place.
The knowledge of Elara's lingering presence hung over the room, a ticking clock counting down to an uncertain but potentially devastating confrontation. They had survived the ritual, but the true danger still lay ahead, a looming threat that they could not ignore. Despite the apprehension that gripped her heart, Margaret felt a shift within herself. It was no longer about simply surviving Elara's wrath. It was about finding a way to defeat her, to free them all from the curse that had haunted them for so long. Even if it meant confronting the darkest depths of Elara's rage, Margaret knew that they had no choice. Robert helped Lily to her feet, their collective strength growing from desperation. The locket pulsated in Lily's hands, the physical manifestation of their ongoing battle for freedom. It was a reminder of the long road that still lay ahead, the sacrifices that had yet to be made. But in that moment, as the flickering light of the candle cast shadows across their faces, Margaret felt a flicker of hope. They had each other, and they had the love that bound them together as a family. And with that love, they could face anything, even the darkest depths of Elara's vengeful fury. Margaret watched him, a glimmer of suspicion mingling with the gratitude she felt for his unwavering support. She couldn't shake the feeling that Elias knew more than he was letting on, that there were secrets he had yet to reveal. But for now, she pushed those doubts aside. They had to focus on the task at hand, on finding a way to break Elara's hold over their lives once and for all. As they prepared to leave the chamber, Lily's hand slipped into Margaret's, her fingers cold and trembling.
Mom.
She whispered, her voice barely audible over the pounding of Margaret's own heart.
I'm scared.
Margaret's throat tightened, tears stinging the corners of her eyes.
I know, my love.
She murmured, pulling Lily close.
I am too, but we'll face this together as a family, and we will find a way to end this, I promise you.
Lily nodded, a flicker of determination replacing the fear in her eyes. She squared her shoulders, a silent declaration of strength that belied her fragile frame. As they stepped out of the chamber and into the waiting darkness, Margaret felt a sense of purpose settle over her. They had been given a second chance, a glimmer of hope amidst the suffocating despair that had haunted them for so long. And she would not let that chance slip away. No matter the cost, no matter the sacrifices that lay ahead, Margaret would fight for her family, for their freedom, and for the chance to finally break free of the curse that had defined their lives for generations. The flickering light of the candle extinguished by a gust of icy wind. But in the hearts of the McAllisters, a new fire had been kindled, a blaze of determination that would guide them through the trials to come. And as they walked into the unknown, they clung to that fire, to the love and strength that bound them together. For in the end, it was all they had, the only weapon they possessed against the darkness that sought to consume them. But it would be enough. It had to be, for the sake of their family, for the memory of those who had suffered before them, and for the promise of a future free from the chains of the past. The McAllisters would fight, and they would not stop until the curse was broken, and Elara's vengeful spirit was finally laid to rest. Lily stood before Elias, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and anticipation. The flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows across the scholar's weathered face, deepening the lines of exhaustion and desperation that etched his features.
Tell me,
Elias repeated, his voice low and urgent.
what do you feel of her?
Lily closed her eyes, focusing inward on the strange, pulsing energy that thrummed through her veins. It was a sensation unlike anything she had ever experienced, a cold, insistent tug that seemed to emanate from the very core of her being.
I feel a presence.
She said, her voice barely above a whisper.
It's faint, but it's there. Like a shadow at the edge of my mind, watching, waiting.
Margaret stepped forward, her brow furrowed with concern.
Lily, are you sure about this? We don't know what kind of hold Elara might have over you now.
Lily opened her eyes, meeting her mother's gaze with a determined stare.
I have to try.
She said, her voice growing stronger with each word.
If there's even a chance that I can use this connection to understand her, to find a way to end this curse, then I have to take it.
Robert placed a hand on Margaret's shoulder, giving it a reassuring squeeze. She's right, he said, his voice gruff with emotion. We've tried everything else. If Lily believes she can reach Elara, then we have to trust her. Elias nodded, a glimmer of hope sparking in his eyes.
Very well. If we're to understand Elara, then we must first understand her origins, the curse that binds her to this world, and the magic that sustains her vengeful spirit.
He pulled a particularly weathered tome from the stack, its pages so brittle that they threatened to crumble at the slightest touch.
This text speaks of a ritual.
He murmured, his finger tracing the faded lines of script.
A dark and terrible rite that could bind a soul to an object, trapping it in a state of endless torment.
Lily leaned forward, her eyes wide with a morbid fascination.
Is that what happened to Elara?
She asked, her voice hushed with a mixture of horror and awe.
Is that why she's so full of rage and pain?
Elias nodded, his expression grim.
I believe so.
He said, carefully turning the page.
The ritual was said to be used as a punishment, a way to condemn the most heinous of criminals to an eternity of suffering. But it was also a way to harness their power, to use their tortured souls as a source of dark magic.
Margaret shuddered, her arms wrapping instinctively around her middle.
That's monstrous.
She whispered, her voice thick with revulsion.
How could anyone do something so cruel?
Elias sighed, his shoulders slumping with the weight of centuries.
The desire for power can drive people to commit unspeakable acts,
He said, his voice heavy with the burden of knowledge.
and once that power is unleashed, it can take on a life of its own, consuming everything in its path.
Lily felt a chill run down her spine, the echo of Elara's presence pulsing in the back of her mind.
So how do we stop it?
She asked, her voice trembling slightly.
How do we free Elara from this curse and break its hold over our family?
Elias shook his head, frustration creasing his brow.
That's the question, isn't it?
He muttered, his fingers drumming restlessly against the table.
The texts are frustratingly vague when it comes to the specifics of the ritual. It's as if the knowledge has been deliberately obscured, hidden away to prevent anyone from unraveling its secrets.
Lily felt a surge of disappointment, the flicker of hope that had kindled in her chest beginning to fade. But then, suddenly, an idea struck her, a flash of inspiration that sent a jolt of excitement racing through her veins.
What if we don't need to know the specifics of the ritual?
She said, her words tumbling out in a rush.
What if we can use my connection to Elara to understand her on a deeper level? To see beyond the rage and the pain and find the person she used to be?
Elias looked up, his eyes widening with surprise.
You mean to search for her humanity?
He asked, his voice tinged with a mixture of skepticism and intrigue. Lily nodded, her heart pounding with a newfound sense of purpose.
Exactly.
She said, her gaze fierce with determination.
If we can find a way to reach her, to connect with the part of her that's still human, then maybe we can convince her to let go of her anger, to find peace, and finally be free.
Margaret and Robert exchanged a glance, their expressions a mix of worry and hope.
It's a risk,
Margaret said, her voice soft but resolute.
but it might be our only chance.
Elias leaned back in his chair, his eyes distant as he considered Lily's words.
It won't be easy.
He warned, his voice grave.
Elara's spirit has been twisted by centuries of suffering. The darkness that consumes her will not be easily swayed.
But Lily was undeterred. She could feel the connection to Elara growing stronger with each passing moment, a tether that linked their souls across the veil of death. And with that connection came a glimmer of understanding, a sense that beneath the vengeful fury that drove Elara's actions, there was a spark of humanity that still lingered.
I have to try.
She said again, her voice ringing with a quiet strength.
For all of us, and for Elara, we've come too far to give up now.
As the words left her lips, Lily felt a sudden, sharp tug on the ethereal cord that bound her to Elara. It was a sensation that sent a gasp rushing from her lungs, her eyes widening with a mixture of shock and realization.
She knows.
She whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of awe and fear.
She can sense what we're planning, what we're trying to do.
Elias leaned forward, his expression intense.
Can you communicate with her?
He asked, his voice low and urgent. Lily hesitated, uncertainty warring with the desperate need to act. She could feel Elara's presence growing stronger, the icy tendrils of her consciousness brushing against the edges of her own. But beneath the cold, beneath the anger and the pain, there was something else. A flicker of warmth, a spark of life that refused to be extinguished. And in that moment, Lily knew what she had to do. Closing her eyes, she reached out with her mind, following the ethereal tether that linked her to Elara. It was a journey that seemed to stretch on for an eternity, a plunge into the very heart of darkness itself. But Lily did not falter. With each step, she could feel the connection growing stronger, the barriers between their souls beginning to blur and fade. And then, suddenly, she was there, standing in a realm of shadows and mist, face to face with the specter that had haunted her family for generations. Elara stood before her, a figure of ethereal beauty wrapped in a shroud of darkness. Her eyes blazed with an otherworldly light, a fire that seemed to consume everything in its path. But as Lily looked closer, she could see the cracks in Elara's armor, the pain that lurked beneath the rage, the sorrow that lay at the heart of her vengeful crusade.
Elara,
Lily said, her voice soft but steady.
I know you can hear me. I know you can feel the connection between us.
The specter's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a snarl of contempt.
You dare to speak to me?
She hissed, her voice a razor-sharp whisper that cut through the air like a blade.
You, who carry the blood of my tormentors in your veins?
Lily stood her ground, refusing to be cowed by Elara's anger.
I am not my ancestors.
She said, her voice calm and even.
And neither are you. You were once human, Elara. Before the curse, before the pain and the suffering, you had a life, a family, people who loved you.
Elara flinched, a flicker of uncertainty passing across her face.
That life is gone,
She said, but there was a hint of hesitation in her voice, a crack in the armor of her rage.
I am nothing but a monster now, a creature of vengeance and despair.
But Lily shook her head, a small, sad smile tugging at the corners of her lips.
You're wrong.
She said, taking a step forward.
You're not a monster, Elara. You're a victim, just like us. A victim of a curse that has twisted your soul, that has trapped you in an endless cycle of pain and suffering.
She reached out, her hand hovering just inches from Elara's spectral form.
But it doesn't have to be that way.
She said, her voice soft but urgent.
You can break free of this curse, Elara. You can find peace and finally be at rest.
For a moment, Elara seemed to waver, the fire in her eyes dimming to a flicker of uncertainty. But then, with a sudden, violent surge of energy, she pulled away, her form dissolving into a swirling vortex of shadows and mist.
No!
She screamed, her voice a howl of rage and despair.
I will not be deceived by your lies. I will have my vengeance, and nothing will stand in my way.
And then she was gone, vanishing into the darkness like a wraith, leaving Lily alone in the realm of shadows and mist. Lily opened her eyes, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps. She was back in the hidden alcove, the ancient tomes and guttering candles a jarring contrast to the otherworldly landscape she had just witnessed. Margaret and Robert were at her side in an instant, their faces etched with concern.
Lily,
Margaret asked, her voice trembling with worry.
are you all right? What happened?
Lily shook her head, trying to clear the lingering cobwebs of Elara's presence from her mind.
I reached her,
She said, her voice hoarse with exhaustion.
but she's too far gone, too consumed by her anger and her pain. She wouldn't listen, wouldn't even consider the possibility of finding peace.
Elias sighed, his shoulders slumping with disappointment.
I feared as much.
He said, his voice heavy with resignation.
The curse has had centuries to fester, to twist her soul into something dark and unrecognizable. It will not be easily broken.
But Lily refused to give up hope. She could still feel the connection to Elara, the ethereal tether that linked their souls across the veil of death. And with that connection came a glimmer of understanding, a sense that beneath the vengeful fury that drove Elara's actions, there was a spark of humanity that still lingered.
We can't give up.
She said, her voice firm with determination.
Elara may be lost in her anger and her pain, but she's not beyond reach. We have to keep trying, to find a way to break through the walls she's built around herself.
Margaret and Robert exchanged a glance, their expressions a mix of worry and resolve.
What do you propose?
Robert asked, his voice gruff but supportive. Lily took a deep breath, her mind racing with possibilities.
We need to learn more about Elara's past,
She said, her words tumbling out in a rush of inspiration.
about the life she lived before the curse, the people she loved and the dreams she had. If we can understand who she was, then maybe we can find a way to reach the person she used to be.
Elias nodded, a flicker of interest sparking in his eyes.
It won't be easy.
He warned, his voice grave.
The records of Elara's life are scattered and fragmented. buried beneath centuries of history and legend. But if we can piece together the truth, then perhaps we can find a way to break the curse and set her spirit free.
As the words left his lips, Lily felt a surge of hope rising in her chest. It was a fragile thing, a flicker of light in the darkness that threatened to engulf them all. But it was enough. Enough to keep her going, to fuel her determination and her resolve. She would not rest until she had found a way to reach Elara, to break the curse that had haunted her family for so long. And with the support of her parents and the guidance of Elias, she knew that she would not have to face this challenge alone. Together, they would unravel the secrets of the past and find a way to bring peace to the tortured soul of Elara Blackwood. The scene faded, the flickering candlelight casting long shadows across the ancient tomes and weathered faces of the McAllisters. But in the hearts of Lily and her family, a new fire had been kindled, a blaze of hope and determination that would guide them through the trials to come. And as they set to work, poring over the faded pages and forgotten lore, Lily could feel the connection to Elara growing stronger with each passing moment. It was a bond that transcended the boundaries of life and death, a link that would lead them to the truth and to the salvation they so desperately sought. For in the end, it was not the power of magic or the strength of arms that would break the curse that had haunted the McAllisters for so long. It was the power of understanding, the strength of compassion, and the unwavering belief in the goodness that lay at the heart of even the most twisted and tormented of souls. And with that power, Lily knew that they would prevail, no matter the obstacles that lay ahead. For in the face of love and forgiveness, even the darkest of curses must eventually yield, and the light of hope would shine once more upon the haunted halls of McAllister Manor. In the suffocating silence of the hidden alcove, Lily stood frozen, her eyes wide and haunted. A single tear welled up unbidden, tracing a glistening path down her pale cheek. It was a physical manifestation of the profound, echoing sorrow that had taken root in her heart, an emotion that felt foreign to her, originating from a place far beyond the confines of her own mind. It was as if the very essence of Elara's pain, the raw, unfiltered anguish of centuries past, had begun to bleed into her own consciousness, blurring the lines between their separate identities. Margaret watched her daughter with a growing sense of unease, her brow furrowed with concern. The toll of this connection was evident in Lily's eyes, the way it seemed to drain the very life from them, replacing it with a haunted, otherworldly gaze.
Lily?
Margaret's voice was soft but urgent.
What's happening? What do you see?
Lily remained unresponsive, lost in a world of her own, a realm of shadows and memory that existed somewhere between the realm of the living and the domain of the dead. In her mind's eye, a vision of the past unfolded, a glimpse into the life that Elara had once led. A lush, vibrant manor filled with the laughter and joy of a wedding celebration. Elara, young and beautiful, her face alight with love and hope as she danced in the arms of her beloved. But then, the vision shifted, the colors fading to a sickly, muted gray. The betrayal that had shattered Elara's heart, the cruel, twisted act that had set her on the path to vengeance and despair. The agony of that moment, the searing, soul-crushing pain that had consumed Elara's very being, twisting her into the vengeful specter that now haunted the McAllisters. A gasp escaped Lily's lips, a scream trapped in her throat. The images were so vivid, so visceral, that for a moment, she couldn't separate Elara's pain from her own. It was as if she was living through that betrayal herself, experiencing the raw, unfiltered agony of a heart torn asunder. Panic threatened to consume her, a rising tide of fear and desperation clawing at the edges of her mind. The question of whether she was losing herself to this spectral echo, whether her sacrifice was now a form of slow-motion possession, a gradual erosion of her own identity, loomed heavily. Desperate for control, Lily focused on a memory of her family, the love that had sustained her through so much darkness and pain. It was a tether to her own humanity, a lifeline in the face of the unknown. But even as she clung to that memory, Elara's presence grew stronger, the spectral woman's emotions bleeding into her own with increasing intensity. Beneath the rage and the vengeance, a flicker of vulnerability, a desperate, aching need for understanding and redemption. In that moment, Lily realized that she and Elara were more alike than she had ever imagined, two souls bound by the weight of ancestral sin and the desperate longing for freedom. But even as that realization washed over her, the vision in her mind began to change once more. The manor faded away, replaced by the all-too-familiar sight of the ritual chamber. But it was a chamber transformed, the ancient idols crumbling to dust, the spectral energy that had once filled the space twisting and writhing into a tangible darkness that seemed to consume everything it touched. Exhaustion weighed heavily upon Lily, her body trembling with the effort of maintaining her grip on reality. The uncertainty of whether this was a glimpse of the future, a premonition of the destruction that Elara's vengeful spirit could unleash, or a twisted illusion designed to break her will and shatter her resolve, gnawed at her mind. All she knew was that the power now flowing through her veins was both a weapon and a curse, a double-edged sword that could either save her family or condemn them all to an eternity of darkness. Margaret rushed to her side, fear and determination warring in her eyes.
Can you control it? Can you use this connection to stop Elara, to break the curse once and for all?
Lily looked up at her mother, her face pale and drawn, her eyes haunted by the weight of the knowledge she now carried.
I don't know.
She whispered, her voice barely audible over the pounding of her own heart.
But I have to try, for all of us.
Robert and Elias exchanged a glance, their expressions grim. The path ahead would be fraught with danger, the power that Lily now wielded as much a threat as it was a potential salvation. But they also knew that they had no choice. The curse that had haunted the McAllisters for so long had to be broken, no matter the cost. And if Lily's connection to Elara was the key to unlocking that freedom, then they would support her, no matter how dark and uncertain the road ahead might be. A sense of grim determination settled over the room, the flickering candlelight casting long shadows across the ancient tomes and weathered faces of the McAllisters. They had come too far to turn back now, too far to surrender to the darkness that threatened to engulf them all. With heavy hearts and a resolve born of desperation, they turned their attention back to the task at hand, poring over the faded pages and forgotten lore with a renewed sense of urgency. The fate of their family, and perhaps the fate of the world itself, rested on their shoulders. They would not rest until they had found a way to break the curse, to set Elara's tortured soul free and banish the darkness that had haunted them for so long. But even as they worked, a sense of unease hung heavy in the air, a palpable feeling of dread that seemed to seep into every corner of the hidden alcove. The power they sought to wield was a dangerous thing, a force that could consume them all if they were not careful. Lily sat in the midst of it all, her eyes distant and her mind lost in the echoes of Elara's pain. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking a razor's edge, balancing on the precipice of a darkness that threatened to swallow them whole. But she also knew that there was no turning back now. The die had been cast, the path had been chosen. Whatever lay ahead, whatever trials and tribulations they might face, they would face them together as a family, united in their love and their determination to break free of the curse that had defined their lives for so long. The darkness was deep and impenetrable, but in the hearts of the McAllisters, a flicker of hope still burned, a tiny, stubborn flame that refused to be extinguished. As they walked forward into the unknown, guided by the strength of their love and the unbreakable bonds of family, they knew that they would not rest until they had found a way to bring light back into the world, to banish the shadows that had haunted them for so long and step forward into a brighter, more hopeful future. In the end, that was all they had: love and the unwavering belief that somehow, someway, they would find a way to triumph over the darkness that threatened to consume them all. With that love as their guide, they knew that anything was possible, even in the face of the darkest, most impossible odds.
Thank you for joining us on another spine-chilling journey, where nightmares come to life and horror knows no bounds. If you enjoyed this tale of terror, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're brave enough, step through the door and subscribe to Sinister Serials, where every day brings a new flavor of fear, from Macabre Mondays to Thriller Thursdays. And don't forget to check out our other terrifying tales, waiting to be discovered in our library of horror. Until next time, keep the lights on, if you dare.